Anyone who's followed my channel for a while will know that I've got strong views on certain issues, on many issues, to be honest. One of them is crime. And there's a particular aspect of crime which I feel very strongly about. And it's something I've witnessed in my life, something that I've experienced. And that is this culture within criminal circles, but also influencing wider society, which incidentally, I should say something before I continue. I'm acutely aware that I've got a little hole here, so I look a bit like Trump at the moment. I'll just reposition this. This is just like it's a bit cold, so I'm just wearing this old top to keep me warm. Yeah. So within criminal circles, but also something that influences society and the communities they operate in, and it is this code of silence, this sort of mentality that people should never ever talk to the police. And it's a mentality I find very, very unfortunate because that mentality directly means that people cannot get justice. In the UK, there is a particular word that's used for people who talk to the police, that is grass. There will be local derivations. I mean, in Northern Ireland, I believe teg was one of the words that used to be used. I might be wrong about that, don't. It's been a long time since I've lived there, so I may have lost some of the dialect. Um, but when I see people talking like that, I feel disgust, to be quite honest, because for those, one of the biggest problems we have with crime in this country, we hear about particularly awful crimes happening like rape and murder, GBH, arson, that sort of thing. But actually, one of the most damaging crimes is this kind of yob culture that wears people down. That is to say, people who are plagued day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out, sometimes for years, by these local gangs. This is something that I've personally related to because I used to live in an inner city area, and local youth gangs basically made family, my family's life pretty difficult. We had to eventually move house. Was a very unpleasant experience. And I know there are people who've been through far worse than what I and my family went through. But that was years ago, and I still remember the impact it had. Um, Now, when certain things happen, like for example, the recent London terror attack, the police are held in very high regard because we are reminded of the serious risk that these people face on a daily basis. And PC Keith Palmer is rightly being hailed as a hero. Um, But the fact of the matter is, there are communities in this country, and you can find examples all over the world. This is not something that's unique to Britain or to Western countries. There's equivalent examples all over the world whereby people who communicate with the police because they want to be decent members of society are seen as almost like traitors within the community. I find this deeply unfortunate. There was a James Nesbitt drama made a number of years ago based on a true story, and what had happened was a young man in North London had been beaten to death by a gang. It was based on a true story, and I haven't seen the production. I didn't want to watch it because Nesbitt's a very good actor, and he tends to star in very hard-hitting dramas, and I didn't want to be depressed by it. But I did see the main scene, which was the murder scene, very depressing, and it sort of showed all the locals kind of witnessing what happened. So, for example, there was some Turkish kebab shop workers, there was people looking out of the flats. Very depressing. And he plays the father of the young man who was murdered by these thugs. Um, and basically, he was going up against the wall of silence. In fact, that's the name of the program. And that isn't an exaggeration because this is sometimes what happens. And it's kind of this culture whereby no one will talk to the police because that would be seen as betraying the criminal scumbags in their midst. I have no problem calling a thug a thug. Um, And I really feel disgust when I hear people using the term grass, because to me it is a way of trying to intimidate possible witnesses, or it's a way of trying to basically maintain criminal behavior, almost like it's acceptable. And in part, it's because in some inner city areas there are difficult relations with the police, so the police are not popular. Goes without saying, in fact, downright despised in some circles. But what I would say to people is you have to put the human factor before your feelings about the police, because you may hate the police, but by not speaking to them, if you have information, if you've seen something and you don't speak to the police, your actions are not going against the police, they're going against the person who suffered. And, we get examples of vigilantism here in the UK in certain areas. People speak to the police to get the windows put in, or they get intimidated. I believe actually the word grass, I'd be tempted to say it should be illegal to use that word, because it isn't just a harmless word, it is a word that's used to intimidate witnesses to serious crime. Um, there's parts of the world where there's a particular trait with this. I mean, in Northern Ireland, um, especially on both sides of the divide, but certainly on the loyalist side, basically these paramilitaries are thugs. They're little more than political criminals, and they very much maintain this code of silence. And it's like we've all heard about the punishment beatings and so on. Now, it's not that I'm not suggesting that some of those who are victims of punishment beatings are not low lives. You get drug dealers and so on. But when a society doesn't have a situation whereby the police are doing the work, where it's kind of like self-policing, that is a really troubling situation, because then you get vigilantism taking hold. And the problem with vigilantism is that mistakes can be made. That's not to say the police can't make mistakes, and they do. But when we entrust the police to protect the public, we're entrusting them as a matter of course, as a matter of a job that they're doing. Um, so I really, really think this culture of intimidating witnesses needs to be absolutely purged, and people need to speak out at the highest levels. Organized crime is a scourge on humanity, and I have enormous respect for anybody with the courage to stand up to criminals. I really do, and sometimes that is dangerous. In Mexico, for example, small town mayors paid with their lives standing up to these evil scumbags who run the drug cartel. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm not politically correct about this. I think organized criminals are the scum of the earth. They may well, put on a little facade and give money to charity, and sometimes they're very skilled at putting on a PR image, but ultimately, mostly men, sometimes women as well, who don't care who they hurt. They will hurt anybody who gets in their way, including innocent civilians. And it's the same mentality with criminals all over the world. And quite frankly, I hate them. They're little better than terrorists. Terrorists commit bloody acts of violence through ideological goals. Criminals don't often have ideological goals, but they have the same sort of ruthlessness more often than not. So I really, really have strong views on those who, and the thing is, those who use the term grass and those who endorse this culture of silence are not necessarily themselves involved in gangs. Very often they're just members of the community who've endorsed this mindset. Now, to be clear, I don't blame people for being afraid to approach the police because they're frightened of I don't blame people for being frightened. That's not what I take issue with, because I can understand that. But what I do despise is those who get into this mob like mentality and then target people who are brave enough to speak out, people who are braver than them. And I really think it's about collective responsibility. And I find in certain inner city areas there is kind of this law onto themselves. It's kind of like this is this neighborhood, whatever it is, outsiders don't understand it. We keep to ourselves, and it's kind of this very close knit clan mentality. That's all very well in terms of tradition, in terms of civic pride, but I don't have a problem with civic pride, but I think it becomes a problem when it then is used to endorse criminal behavior, and it's used to threaten anybody who. I was at I was at a sort of community get together. How can I put it? It was a kind of event that I was at with people who had various problems, mental health issues, and so on. It was just a discussion group. And I remember one guy at that group said, we talked about all sorts of things, and one day we were talking about crime, and the guy just came out and said, in my neighborhood, we never talk to the police, and if anyone talked to the police, they'd have the windows put in. And I actually challenged him there and then. I said, not so much him personally, but I challenged the idea. I'm quite proud that I did. And the truth is, it isn't easy to do this. Now, I'm not saying I was taking a massive risk because that was, it wasn't in the neighborhood, but it's a mentality I totally despise. There's nothing brave about threatening people for speaking to the police. You call them grasses. I call them decent members of the public who are doing the right thing. And I'm not saying the police aren't capable of being corrupt. I'm not saying the police shouldn't be criticised. There are many examples. I am very outspoken on cases of the police abusing their position, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about basic justice. When crimes are being committed, when serious crimes are being committed, people should not be intimidated to do the right thing by speaking to law enforcement, which is the only way to get justice. Now, you could argue we take care of it ourselves, and I understand in many communities that is the approach. It's an approach that's always been used. But sometimes you get situations where outsiders are targeted simply because they're outsiders and they don't understand this clan code where we look after our own mentality, and they speak to the police when they've been victims of crime and then they're targeted again. It's disgusting. So as far as I'm concerned, there is absolutely no honour in this mentality, and I believe the Home Secretary, the Justice Minister, and anyone who's in a position of influence should be speaking out against this mentality. Criminals should not be protected. That's the bottom line. I understand witnesses being afraid to come forward. That's a different issue. What I'm talking about is people who actually threaten witnesses and people who endorse this mentality that there is something wrong fundamentally with speaking to the police. Let's say, for example, you have a young family who has had the window put in and maybe one of their children has been seriously hurt by the brick. Are you honestly telling me they shouldn't go to the police? What sort of sick mindset is that? Anyway, I'll leave it there. That's how I feel about this. Um, I'm not naive. I'm not naive. I understand that different neighborhoods have very, very different contexts. And I also understand in different countries, it's not exactly the same situation. So there's parts of the world where the police are absolutely filthy with corruption. And I wouldn't go to the police in certain countries because they're basically paramilitaries and they're no better than the criminals who are supposed to be policing. But in the UK, the mentality of, oh, you go to the police when you're a grass, I say, fuck you. Don't be a card. Don't threaten people who are doing the right thing. And what I would say is, if you are aware of a serious crime, do the right thing. Go to the police because there is strict anonymity in place. And I would also say this: I believe threatening witnesses should really incur extremely harsh penalties. We need to send out the message this culture will not be tolerated. I mean, when we think about crime, it isn't just about individual incidents, it's about a mentality that allows it, that glamorizes it, that treats it like it's an acceptable thing. There's no way people should be frightened to leave their own home in Britain in the 21st century, anywhere. But, simplify, this video should not be happening in Britain in the 21st century. Let me know your thoughts. I just have no time for that sort of mentality. Um, and I know there's risks with speaking to the police, but sometimes you have to do the right thing. You have to search your conscience. You don't even have to like the police, but in the end of the day, they're the ones with the responsibility and the power to make arrests. Thanks for watching.